Hey, it's Mr. Spencer. We're talking about Bernice bobs her hair today. If you search YouTube, you will find a video. It might be the third or fourth. It was made by some film students around Massachusetts. It's a great little 9-minute video that kind of goes over the whole story of Bernice bobs her hair. Okay, they've got some good actors there, and it's kind of a modern retelling of Bernice bobs her hair. If you want to check that out, just search YouTube. Looks like that. Okay, HW Film Festival. Now, what I'm talking about is a summary of the story. So where are we? Right there. Bernice bobs her hair. Okay, now as you read the story, we talked about in the last video, the ocean metaphors. You'll notice some run-on sentences that kind of slow down as you comprehend everything that Fitzgerald's trying to do. But our author uses these run-on sentences on purpose because he wants you to slow down and understand every little detail he's putting into this short story. He also starts with a dry and overly deliberate tone and writing style on the first and second page of the story. He describes the orchestra for this dance. He describes what's happening there. But then it shifts when he introduces the teenagers' dialogue. Okay, when people start talking in quotes, we see characters that are teenagers, and the shift of the story becomes much more playful and flirtatious, just like the attitude of these teenagers are at this dance. Okay, for your analysis assignment, you are looking at examples of the plot pyramid, like we did with The Pit and the Pendulum by Edgar Allan Poe. This one, we're looking at a conflict, rising action detail. Climax is the most intense moment, whether it's a physical climax like something you see in The Fast and the Furious, or King Kong on the top of the Empire State Building, or in some of these more literary type stories, it might be an internal climax, like a psychological, emotional climax, not necessarily a character that punches or kicks each other. Okay, there might be something with scissors and something getting cut. So pay attention to this. Bernice bobs her hair. Where is the climax? It's usually near the end of the story. Then you have a couple details of falling action and the final resolution. Is it a positive resolution or is it a negative resolution to that original conflict? Okay, I summarized on your assignment what the original story's conflict is. The first 3 pages summarize: at a rich, fancy summer dance hosted at a country club, a bunch of rich teenagers flirt and dance with each other. We meet an awkward 18-year-old girl named Bernice, who's staying with her popular and attractive cousin Marjorie for yet another summer. Seems like they've done this many years before. As Marjorie tries to make over and guide and help Bernice to stop being so old-fashioned, a prude, and win more boys' attention. Marjorie wants her cousin to be more popular, and Marjorie feels powerful and in control if she can help her cousin become a little bit more attractive to the boys. So Bernice actually seems to be beautiful, but despite her beauty, she is hopelessly unpopular. The boys want to dance with Bernice on the first few pages of the story, but the more boys that dance with her, they get bored and just give up because she's not a good conversationalist, and I guess she doesn't know all the right dance moves or charming, flirtatious methods that Marjorie does. Okay, there's a character on the second page introduced that's Warren. He's 19, and Warren is hopelessly in love with the beautiful girl next door. He grew up as a neighbor of Marjorie, so she's like the beautiful girl next door. And apparently, the narrator tells us the word is Warren is crazy about Marjorie. But to try to just, I don't know, win favor for Marjorie, he is nice and pities her cousin Bernice. She's sort of dopeless, as Fitzgerald uses some informal language, and you see the tone slightly shift. Bernice is good looking, but I guess just not popular. So Warren dances with her out of pity. Okay. And to try to win favor with Marjorie, the girl next door he's obsessed with, he tries to dance with Bernice, but gives up. Okay. As we go on to the next parts of the story, after the dance later that night, Bernice overhears Marjorie and her mother, Mrs. Harvey, discussing Bernice in private. And as you go to page 3, okay, Mrs. Harvey talking to her daughter, Marjorie, they say that, okay, Bernice has ladylike manners and that Bernice has a sweet personality. Many adults think Bernice has a sweet personality. She's a good girl. However, Marjorie quickly dismisses all those qualities and thinks that, no, Bernice is unappealing. She's old-fashioned and she's got a weak, self-righteous personality. The boys think she's stuck up because she doesn't have anything nice to say when she talks to him in the dance. So Marjorie kind of throws shade at Bernice in private, but Bernice is eavesdropping. Bernice is like listening in the corner. You see that picture there. So Bernice hears her cousin mock her and disavows her as a lost cause and just dismiss her. So finally, Bernice is like, I'm going to confront Marjorie. So the Roman numeral, we go to chapter 3 of the short story. The Roman numeral here, yikes. My mouse wheel, sorry, all over the place. Stop moving, mouse wheel. Okay, Bernice confronts Marjorie. He's like, I was listening. And she says on page 3, I've tried to be nice and I've been neglected and then insulted by you talking to your mother. No one ever visited me and got such treatment. I'm a guest in your house. Marjorie's silent. And then on page 4, Bernice is like, I know I'm in the way. I'm a drag on you. I'll just go back home, all right? I'll leave. I'll go back home to Minnesota. I don't need to stay here anymore. And Marjorie, she's not embarrassed, but Marjorie's like, fine, go. I don't care. Go. And Bernice wasn't expecting this. Marjorie's eyes show boredom. Bernice starts crying. I'm visiting you. I was to stay a month. If I go home, my mother will know and she'll wonder. And Marjorie's like, are you done yet? Marjorie's like, I don't got time for this. So Bernice crying. Marjorie's finally just like, all right, you're bland. You're useless. You lack any real personality. However, I can help you. So Bernice hides herself, but Marjorie comes back with a little proposal. Marjorie's like, I'll help you. All right. So hurt though she is, Bernice admits to finding herself at a loss as to why she's so unpopular. Desperate for some relief, she agrees to follow Marjorie's advice on fashion, conduct, and anything else pertinent to solving this problem of her unpopularity. Okay. As we move on to like page 7 and page 8, Marjorie raises the question to Bernice of whether she should get her hair cut and maybe in a more fashionable bob hairstyle. The bob hairstyle looks kind of like this, and many girls still use it as a way to sort of change their look. Okay, the bob haircut's when you cut it real short, okay, shorter than shoulder length almost. I don't know much about girls' fashion or hair, but I know that this is still popular, something my wife has tried a couple times. Okay, I'm thinking of Marjorie as like Regina George from Mean Girls, all right? That's what I think of as Marjorie. The alpha, the queen bee, the mean girl, manipulative, controlling, but she's trying to do good for her cousin. She's trying to do good for her cousin, Bernice. All right, so even though Bernice is horrified at the idea of getting her hair cut like this, Bernice agrees to consider it. And soon everyone's gossiping about this bobbed hairstyle. So you're going to get a haircut? You're going to get a barbed haircut? So, following Marjorie's precise coaching, including things that she can say, quotes from the famous Oscar Wilde, and funny things, Bernice finally starts achieving popularity with the other teenagers. Bernice is like rising up the social ladder, getting more popular. Whereas before she only had a few dance partners, she now finds herself cut in on, or other boys try to cut in and say, hey, let me dance. And then Warren gets in her, and then Jonathan's like, oh, let me, and then Bobby comes, let me dance with Bernice. They all want to dance with Bernice. The tables have turned a little bit. Now, Bernice falters at first. Her charming and little flirtatious things aren't quite refined and polished yet, but she's trying to take Marjorie's advice, and she gradually learns self-confidence and an internal sense of social ease. Eventually, Bernice comes to attract the attention of Warren, who considers Bernice nearly as appealing as the ever-distant Marjorie was. Jealous and embarrassed by all the gossip, though, Marjorie then turns against Bernice. She undercuts her socially wherever possible and calls her promise to cut her hair a bluff. She's like, Bernice isn't going to cut her hair. Embarrassed and backed into a corner, all right, Bernice is like, I'm going to do it. She knows the haircut might not be flattering to her, but she's finally like, I'm going to get the haircut, the bobbed haircut that everyone's gossiping about is making me so attractive. So a crowd gathers at the barbershop to watch the spectacle. And in the end, it's Marjorie's little clever smile that pushes Bernice to commit to the haircut. When it proves embarrassingly ugly in the end, especially Warren doesn't like it, Bernice finds herself the social outcast once more. All right. So if you want to watch some of that video, like I said, you could check out Bernice Bobs Her Hair. There is that short 9-minute video. There's also a movie from the 1970s that was made, but that's a longer movie. I don't encourage you to watch. But you could check out some of this if you want to see the modern adaptation. Okay, it was done by some film students and some teenagers as they show the story of Bernice and Marjorie as it progresses through all sorts of drama. Okay, the end of the story is crazy. This story is a banger, but you got to get to the end. There's 6 Roman numeral chapters, and at the end, I can't spoil it for you, but you got to read it for yourself. 15 pages. Bernice Bobs Her Hair. For your analysis work, you're trying to track through the rising action. How does the conflict and problem get more complex? You could write 15 different things for this. Just find one example before the climax. I'm going to argue the climax of the story is near the end, Is it when she gets her hair cut, or is it something afterwards on the last page of the story? Read the last page of the story carefully. The falling action is where the most intense moment has passed and things start to settle and calm down. And then the final resolution might be somewhere in that last paragraph. Be precise. Give me the detail of exactly what happens. What possible symbolism could there be? What about the waves in the water? What could they symbolize? Could they symbolize social classes as we move up and down? Could they symbolize the way little minnows and fish are eaten by larger fish or guppies? Big fish like sharks. Okay, are we swimming with sharks here when we're in the high class social area of this country club area? Or what could scissors represent? Is it just cutting in when you're dancing, or could scissors represent some other type of cutting, brokenness, or fragmentation? What about dancing? What could that represent? What kind of flirtatious relationship ideas could dancing represent? Or could it represent how people dance through the social classes from lower, middle to upper class? Does Bernice push herself up to the upper class? And what does hair symbolize? What kind of ideas could hair symbolize? That's up to interpretation, but it's probably the most important symbol in the story. Okay, now I might think that hair symbolizes freedom. Maybe the cutting of hair represents freedom. It could represent femininity or like a sense of self. Maybe hair represents values. Maybe it's like, okay, Bernice and Marjorie, their mother's generation might have different values than the younger character's generation would have. Maybe long hair is considered a symbol of femininity, but maybe the short hair represents a more masculine type of value. Um, Maybe hair represents an idea of sexuality, romance, or power dynamics between how men and women sort of use control and power to push or pressure or provoke members of the opposite sex. Think about how hair might be symbolic. Okay, for parts of speech review, you're trying to find an adjective anywhere in the story and then the noun it describes. Okay, the first sentence of the story says the black and wavy ocean. Okay, an adjective is a descriptive word, a noun is a person, place, thing, or idea. On the second page of the story, there's dances that are described, but they're also described as what kind of dances? Christmas dances. Normally, in some contexts, Christmas would be a noun, like a thing, an event, but here it's describing the noun dances. So Christmas functions as an adjective, just like riotous functions as an adjective. What type of dance? It's a riotous dance. What type of dance? It's a Christmas dance. There's also hops, which is a kind of informal dance, which is described as a summer hop. What kind of evening and dances were these? They were also described as warm and exciting types of hops and dances. Adjectives. Okay, find 5 adjectives in the story, note the page number, and then the noun they describe. You did this with Edgar Allan Poe, and we did this with The Pit and the Pendulum, so now we're doing it with F. Scott Fitzgerald. Okay, and then you've got some questions to read, and as you go through, I gave you quotes to help you with the questions. Some of these you're making conclusions, some are just interpretations, but you do have 10 questions to go through as you work through the story. Okay, I think maybe the hardest question might be number 6. At 18, our convictions are hills from which we look. At 45, they are caves in which we hide. Do you agree with this statement? Be thoughtful. What is the author trying to say? How is this helpful or important in this text? Okay, that's from, I think, on page 5 of the story. So as I go to page 5, we'll see it right there near the end of the chapter 2. Okay, after Bernice has eavesdropped and overheard what Marjorie said about her to Marjorie's mother, mocking Bernice. A conviction is like a value you hold dearly. So at 18, our values are hills from which we look, like a metaphor. Like we have these great values and we stand on top of those values and we feel confident, we stand up straight at age 18. As we get older, these values and convictions we have, these principles we stand by, they become caves in which we hide in. Things that make us cowardly and we want to run away from people. We don't want to confront things as we get older. So we use our values as places to hide within so we don't have to deal with other counter arguments or alternative opinions that people have. That's how I interpret that for the question number 6. But you give your own interpretation. Do you agree? What's the author trying to say? How is this helpful or important in the text? Does Marjorie use the values to stand out and be confident? Does Bernice use her values and convictions about how to deal with boys and other people as hills to stand up tall and be confident? Or does Marjorie's mother or the adults in the story hide behind their traditions? Do they hide behind their values? Like someone would hide inside of a cave because they don't want to deal with the outside world, or they don't want to deal with the way society is changing. It's a brilliant quote. You can see how deep thinking F. Scott Fitzgerald is as you work through the rest of your questions there. If you have other questions or there's a question you're struggling with, give your best guess, or you can use the It's Learning messages here with that little speech bubble and send me a message, okay? If you have any other questions, I'm here all day, 7:45 to 3:15. I'd be happy to help you. If you want to do a little Google Meet, a little Zoom chat, send me a message and we can talk for a few minutes, or I can help you with your work. Mr. Spencer, signing off.